Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We are now at almost the end of the first day of this GEEF 2025. There is no better panel that I can imagine than this one, because it will showcase to us what youth can actually do. It's about balancing passion and practicality, youth-led solutions for a sustainable future. Youth leadership is not only about activism, it's about solutions, it's about policy influence and meaningful engagement.
We're thrilled and honored to have with us three remarkable young leaders as panelists who will be introduced by the moderator of this session, Cherry Sung, a senior student at Chadwick International. Cherry, the floor is yours.
Thank you and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the introduction, Dr. Ko. As introduced, I'm Cherry Sung, currently a senior at Chadwick International, and I'm thrilled to discuss balancing passion and practicality, youth-led solutions for a sustainable future. This topic is really close to my heart as I myself has been involved in environmental activism for many, many years. I'm the founder of an international organization that focuses on youth environmental education, which is called Greener is Cleaner. And since 2020, I worked under the Ministry of Environment's Environmental Education Center's Youth Council. In Korean, it was 국가환경교육센터. And as a chairperson, I worked with various youths from different parts of South Korea to examine national policies and also propose our own. Among all of the awards that I have received, one that is the most important to me, in my opinion, was RISE. RISE is a recognition given to young, bright leaders around the world. Only 100 people are selected every year, a joint initiative of Smith Futures and Rose Trust. And through this scholarship, I was able to meet 99 other leaders who had different passions in different social, economic, environmental, different areas. And during the summer, while discussing with all of these leaders, something that I thought and pondered deeply about is how can we not only explore our passions, but also make practical impact, and what is the thin, fine line in between them? As a result, I came across these discussion topics for this panel. First of all, how youth-led initiatives can make meaningful impacts despite systematic limitations. Second one is the intersection of activism, policymaking, and STEM and sustainability. Last but not least, how we, as young youth, can avoid greenwashing and champion authentic change. With these topics in mind, I would like to now discuss my journey starting when I was only 13 years old. In the beginning, I started with simple volunteering for an NGO in Korea, Greenpeace Korea. And by speaking, lobbying since 2019, I came across various instances, somewhat greenwashing, somewhat championing actual change. And all of these experiences taught me to really value solidarity, which means collaboration and cooperation. And this isn't just about among youth. I think that collaboration across generations was really important. However, as I said, going across these instances, my representation was not always ideally practical. What I mean by this is that sometimes I was handed a pre-written script to read in front of vast audiences, and that to me didn't feel that meaningful. So I had to identify and define meaningful action, and I hope our panelists here today are ready to discuss the same. Despite obstacles that I have faced, there were many wins. And by wins, I mean making systematic change, going across barriers that I was faced. For example, I sent with an activist group a packet of unused plastic straws to Milk Dairies Corporation and Namyang Dairies Corporation in Korea. As a result of this campaign, they changed their plastics into biodegradable ones, and one of them just decided to remove plastic straws at all. Secondly, in the National Environmental Education Youth Council that I previously introduced, we were able to propose a policy to mandate environmental education in Korean public schools, and that was reviewed by the Ministry of Environment and the Ministry of Education, passing in 2023. Last but not least, personally, I was invited to be the youngest speaker at the 2020 3 United Nations World Food Forum at Rome. So I was able to give the similar speech I'm giving here to policymakers worldwide in Rome last year. Now done with my introduction, now I would like to introduce our amazing panelists, starting with Jae-yeon Han. He's a student at Dakhyun High School and has been involved as the Korean Youth Policy Institute Environmental Solidarity Planning Team. Second, we have Kyla Kim, sophomore at Chadwick International. She's leading the Greeners Cleaner Club herself and is the founder of SDG 18, her own nonprofit organization. Last but not least, you have already met Jae-yeon Han. She's entering Yeonjung Middle School and a member of Ecosophia Club. With 3 panelists today, we are able to discuss the 3 discussion topics that we have introduced, starting with Jae-yeon Han. You may have the floor. Thank you.
네,
So as introduced, I am Jae-yeon Han.
사실 처음 이 자리까지
Actually, it took a lot of thoughts on my part to come here. And when I was first asked to be here as a panelist, it really got me think about what kind of activities I've been doing. I do some volunteer work, and also I go out and meet with people. And I thought about what kind of story do I want to tell about this environmental activism that I'm participating in. And so after much thinking, I am here. I want to focus on volunteering. So even though this is in the framework of climate actions, but I want to share what kind of volunteer activities can be done by students like me. And also I wanted to tell my own story as a volunteer activist. So I want to thank the organizers for inviting me as well to share my story. So to briefly introduce myself, my school is a Dakhyun High School. It is in Yangju area in the Gyeonggi province. So I'm really just a regular student. And when I sometimes go out to participate in environmental volunteer activities, and people often think about I look like some celebrity, and it's kind of funny I'm sitting here, but I've been leading some nationwide effort in terms of the environmental solidarity. So I'm part of the environmental solidarity planning group as well. And I'm also, there's also a special youth conference. So I'm a member of the climate and environmental team of the special youth conference. So here, as a youth, what kind of perspective can I share as a youth in terms of policy ideas? And I was also a Greenpeace volunteer, and there are many people who are in difficulties, and there are many people who are helping them. So I wanted to share that story. So I also worked as the Ministry of Justice and Gyeonggi-do High School reporter. And I want to ask you these 3 questions. And I also want to touch upon these 3 questions during my talk. So when you hear environmental volunteerism, what comes to your mind? So usually picking up waste on the street maybe, but to me, environmental volunteerism is not just about picking up waste. It's not just about using the public transportation. But if you do only these small things, that's sufficient to make you an environmental volunteer. So the youth who are engaged in the society, particularly in the environmental activities, oftentimes our parents are worried about such activities. You're still only an adolescent, you're a teenager, what can you do? How can you lead a conference about environment? So my parents were also worried about me. So, but I wanted to tell my story to many people. So with many Also based on my own experiences, I wanted to share my story and how I felt while participating in those activities. And I also want to talk about what kind of person I want to be. So here are 3 pictures. So it's a very spring-like pictures. It's a cherry blossom, as you can see. Cherry blossom. What comes to your mind? It's a common landscape we get to enjoy in springtime. But because of our bad behavior, if there is not sufficient participation from the society, and if the humanity only thinks about humans' happiness, then one day we will lose cherry blossom. I want to take an example. COVID-19, it was a global pandemic, and when it happened, everyone was confused. And everyone was struggling, and the COVID-19 situation went on for 3 years. And it really put many people in difficult situations. And I think the cause for COVID-19 is human. And I think humans and the things that we humans do to the environment, that's what caused the COVID-19 situation. So if we need to find a solution, I think the solution can be found amongst human beings. So as I was thinking about the cause for COVID-19, I also thought about what we could do. So the first idea was to participate in the environmental volunteer activities in Greenpeace. With the COVID-19, many people were going through difficult times, so I started volunteering at Greenpeace. And as I was looking for volunteer activities, I realized that many volunteer programs did not welcome adolescents, did not welcome teenagers. It was frustrating for me, but I didn't stop there. And the reason why I'm sharing this story with Greenpeace during the COVID-19 period is I worked really hard to register myself as a volunteer with Greenpeace. For example, I picked up plastic waste on the street and I participated for a few days. And also to participate there, I filled out an application form, and I think I was quite passionate back then. And this Greenpeace plastic survey that I participated in, as I was filling out the application form and I was writing out why I want to participate in this program, I said I want to help other people and I want to make a contribution to protect our environment. That went on for about 1,500 words. And then I called Greenpeace the next day, and the staff picked up my call, and I told the staff, I may be only a student, but I really want to volunteer. Even if I don't make the cut for this time around, please remember me. I want to participate. And that staff told me, who's speaking? And I said, I'm an adolescent who's very keen on participating in environmental volunteerism. And then the staff just told me that you don't need to write such long reasons as to why you want to participate. Anyone who wants to join us can come and participate in the volunteer work. And that just blew my mind. Because I didn't think it will be so easy just to participate. But I think it also was a great experience for me to realize how passionate I am about this topic. And of course, I wasn't the only volunteer. I worked with other friends who participated. And so I started participating with my friends. And then we did our own survey about what kind of plastics are used in our own household, what kind of plastic waste is being generated by my family. And then I went to academic institute after school, and then I was rummaging through a waste bin there because I wanted to see what kind of plastic waste was being generated there. So the teacher saw me doing that and thought it was weird and asked me why I was doing that. I was going through a waste bin, and I told him I was volunteering in the Greenpeace plastic domestic survey. So, but when I explained my situation, many of my friends, they told me that the Greenpeace volunteer work seems to be very daunting, very difficult to do. So I was quite disappointed because I really wanted to do this together with my friends. But I realized that many of my friends were not just very keen on volunteering for the environment. So that was a bit of a letdown, but I still continued on. And the Greenpeace plastic survey within a household. So for me, it was a really meaningful exercise. But after that, I got to participate in the special meeting on youth offered by the Ministry of Gender Equality and Family. So here, the ministry collects opinions from the youth, and then they incorporate that into policy ideas. And here, I also had to fill out an application form, and I thought that the ministry would want adolescents who have some prior experiences of social activities. So unless you are really excellent in terms of your track record of extracurricular activities, nobody listens to you. That's kind of a lesson for me. And I participated in a lot of volunteer works because mostly I just wanted to help other people, and I saw problem in the environment. And I wanted to hear other people's voices as well who feel the same way. But COVID-19 was also going on, so nobody wanted to accept me as a volunteer. But I made like dozens of calls because I wanted to volunteer for the environmental activities. But every time I introduced myself as just a regular adolescent who just interested in the environmental matters and wanted to participate in volunteer work, everybody's answer was that you're still too young. I don't think it is about age. So one day, okay, this is my last attempt, and if I get refused this time too, then I will stop. So I called this Gyeonggi Province Office of Education, Agency of Education, and then so I called them. Somebody picked up my call, and they asked who I am, and I said I'm just an adolescent who's interested in the environmental issues, and I wanted to volunteer. So my call got redirected to some kind of officer, I guess, and then I told that person my story for about half an hour, and that officer later told me that he had a very weird impression of me. So that was his first impression. But because I was an adolescent, and also I was really begging for my last chance to volunteer, so that officer said, okay, then I will give you a chance. So participate and let me know how you feel about it. So I got accepted. So I got to be part of the special meeting on youth. And then here, the adolescents were encouraged to share their ideas about policy. I was really happy working there. I got to meet many like-minded people, and environmental policy and policy on education. As an adolescent, I got to share my ideas about these policies and such. I was one of the first person who had really nationwide adolescent environmental activities. It was not easy. The round trip commute time took about a couple of hours, and I had to help others. And for the first time, there was a nationwide gathering of adolescents to work for the environment. But so that was really exciting for me. And I also did a lot of volunteer works, and I got to meet other youth, and I'm still working the same way. And I'm doing a lot of research as well. So I became the number one. I won the first prize, the minister's prize for my activities. And now I'm registered as a volunteer at Greenpeace. And I get to meet many citizens. And today I am here. And the last thing I want to say here is adolescents can participate. But it only takes more effort because not many adults want to listen to adolescents, but still we can participate. And one thing I want to say here is I hope the society can be more welcoming to adolescent stories and to learn our perspective. And I hope to see more news stories and news coverage about our perspective. And my last message is I don't want to give up. And I always wanted to work with other citizens. And I wanted to just continue on. As I was doing a lot of environmental activities, my parents didn't like it. My parents wanted me to focus on studying, but still I was able to continue my volunteer activities because I am really sincere about environmental volunteer activities. And adolescents, we also need your support. And when we have your support, we will be able to share more ideas about policy. And no matter what challenges lie ahead of me, I want to be with you, and I want to work with you, and I want to help other people. And I will not give up in this regard. So that's my promise that I'm making here today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jaeyeon, for your amazing messages about solidarity and overcoming the first obstacles in starting volunteerism. And I'm also glad we have a fellow Greenpeace volunteer here. Next, we will have Kyla Kim, our panelist, begin her speech.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kyla Kim, and thank you for the introduction, Cherry. I'll just talk a little bit about myself, even though I was introduced earlier. I'm currently a sophomore at Chadwick International, the same school that Cherry attends, and I am leading the environmental organization called Greener is Cleaner. Fun fact about Greener is Cleaner, since that was also mentioned from Cherry earlier, I was first introduced to Greener is Cleaner when I attended Mock COP 26 back in 2020. It's kind of weird because that was during the COVID pandemic, and the fellow panelist over here also seemed to start his journey in the COVID era. I guess everyone started there. But during that time, I was the youngest delegate there, and I guess it was very intimidating as a young student to approach the topic of climate action and climate change. But when I was there, I was introduced to a new approach for me of how to interact with climate action. And for me, that was policy making, since in Mock COP26 we had to make high-level statements and discuss some NDCs for each of our countries as we represented them. But today I want to talk about a variety of approaches to climate action that I explored across the 6 years that I've been involved in environmental activism. If you look down the list of the things that I've listed here, I've also attended the GYCT Oxford Net Zero Youth Cohort, and here I was challenged to look at various approaches that people had. There were environmental engineers here, there were scientists, there were entrepreneurs, there were policymakers, there were lawyers, there were a variety of people that were all united under the same objective of climate action. But it was a very broad spectrum of different people. And here I was truly inspired because I didn't know that there were so many approaches that I could take in regards to climate action. And I just explored a very small portion of what was possible. So from here, I started to explore other options. And when I was a part of the 삼성 꿈나무 환경기자단, which is basically an environmental organization that collects youth reporters to talk about environmental problems and how to solve them, I explored specifically on how I could integrate the field of STEM and technology and how that can be incorporated into climate action. Because in the climate action space, like the previous panelist has mentioned, I don't think enough diversity is provided in the different approaches we can take. We usually think about, oh, we should pick up trash, we should campaign in front of governmental buildings, we should try to change these policies. But in reality, there's just so many different diverse approaches that you can make in this space. So I just wanted to talk a bit more about how I came to my journey of finding my passion and finding my voice in this vast and broad space. And another question that I always held close to my heart, which is the second question: why exactly is it so hard to change our perception and behavior towards climate change, whether you are an activist or a non-activist? And I'm going to try and propose my viewpoint on how exactly we should perceive climate change. So let me just start with my own journey. So since I started my climate activism journey as a teenager, as a youth, it was quite interesting because when you're a teenager, you're trying to find your place in society and you're trying to figure this whole thing out, right? It's very complicated. And I think there were a lot of parallels between my climate activism journey and just my journey as a teenager, just trying my best to find my place in society. For example, there's the issue of trying to be heard, trying to make my voice heard, right? Making a difference in this world. But there's always that fear that I'm too young, that I'm just a minor part in this world, and I don't matter in this world right now. So with this in mind, it was very hard to find my own voice in society. The pictures here, except for the very last one on the right, I took myself. And I took these pictures because I think they represented my journey in several different ways. The picture on the far left, I actually tried to take a photo of the moon. You can barely see the moon here. It was a very foggy day, so the visibility apparently was not great. But what I wanted to say from that picture is that the end destination, or what I'm trying to work for, is very unclear for me most of the time, because I always have these questions in my head. Will this actually make a difference? Will I have impact, right? And that leads to my second picture, which is actually, the background is the sky. It's very pretty. But the object there is the tree. And the tree has multiple different branches, the major branches and then the small branches leading from those major branches. And that just, for me, represents the diversity of approaches that you could have to climate action. And that can be both inspiring and exciting, but it can also be very, very intimidating. So like I said, I tried multiple different methods, campaigning, I tried petitioning, I tried policy making, And finally, like I said before, I tried to find the intersection between STEM and climate action. And here is where I found my voice. And my voice was found in the process of innovation. I actually started in the humble space of my own house. I got scolded by my mom a lot because a lot of these experiments, well, they're experiments. And doing them in my house caused a bit of chaos, I guess. In those pictures that I provided on the far left upper corner, that's bioplastic that I tried to make from the leftover starch from the potatoes that were in my house. And obviously my mom was not very happy about that because the potatoes, they were about to go bad. There were a few sprouts on them, so my mom was about to throw them away. But I was like, oh, actually, I want to try and see if I can make bioplastic from it, because I read a lot of articles from my previous years in the journalist organization that I was in, the Youth Environmental Journalist organization from Samsung that I introduced earlier. And I was like, oh, you know what? Why not give it a try? And in Korea, naturally, it's very hard for teenagers like myself to access labs or any, any like sparkly equipment. So I decided, why not take it into my own hands and try it at home? And I actually did. Was able to make bioplastic. It had similar properties to it, and I'm still making a few changes to it. But that was just my first impression of being able to make eco-innovations, right? And the pot, the picture of the pot next to that, is my journey of trying to make plastic out of textile waste. It's coming from a shirt that I don't wear anymore, and I was actually successful in that as well. And I used that idea in an entrepreneurship session that I attended called LaunchX. And it was a very interesting experience to integrate the climate action space, innovation, and entrepreneurship. So like I said, multiple different approaches. And the other pictures are more pictures of me experimenting, especially with solar panels, batteries, electronics. And on the far right, the bottom corner over there, that's for some photos of me collaborating with some 5th graders in my school on how to make a new system that can create energy from water, so hydropower, but how can we create a representation of that? So you can see I'm smiling quite a lot here in that picture. So I think this is when I found my voice. I was like, oh yes, this is how I want to make an impact. And this is how I was able to combine my passion with climate action. So here are some. Here is one accomplishment I want to point out specifically, which was when I, that textile waste problem that I mentioned earlier. I was able to visit the Seoul Upcycling Center and have a discussion with them about how they could integrate the solution that I found to their system, and they agreed to have further discussions about the implementation, which to me was a very big win, because as a teenager, again, it's really, really hard to be heard by adults to make a significant impact on the world. And by doing this, I was able to be awarded the RICO Sustainable Development Award of 2024. And I was able to actually help an existing center or an existing system to make systematic change. So that was a very helpful experience for me. This is just another slide about that bioplastic that I just wanted to share. As you can see, it's very unofficial. It's in my house, but still, everyone has to start somewhere, right? So that's what I did. And in the end, I founded this group called SDG 18, which is all about youth taking action. Currently, we have members from 10 different countries, 50 different members, and what I realized is everyone has a different approach to climate action. For me, like I said, was innovation and technology. That was how I was able to represent my own unique voice in climate action. Other members had other ideas. Some of them wanted to express their ideas through film, some through art, some through policymaking. But through all of these different views, what I realized is we all have different approaches, we have different origins, we have different backgrounds, there were different age gaps, but we're all united under the same goal of climate action, and that's all that really mattered. So that is the big summary of my journey. It's just that I had to find my own unique voice in climate action, but through those multiple different approaches, at first, even though I was intimidated by the variety of approaches that you could take to climate action, at the end I realized it's actually an opportunity. If you look at it from a different facet, it's an opportunity for all of these different people to come together. Because if I go back to this, the theme of today's session, passion and practicality, it's not practical for one individual or one approach to solve this big issue of climate change, right? It's better to have more approaches, more individuals contributing to this whole issue and challenge that we have to tackle. And that's why I think that it is way more practical and feasible for these different approaches to come together. And there's a certain beauty in the complexity of the climate action space. So this photo over here, especially the one on the left, visualizes what I think of climate action for me. There's people from different perspectives and different approaches that come together at one intersection to work towards the same thing. And drawing back to my second question, it's hard to get a firm grasp or have a very exact perception about climate change. There was an article released by Vox that said climate change is always shown in the media as something negative. There's words like distance, doom, dissonance, and a theme of denial that's portrayed in the climate change space. But here I want to propose to you all to view climate action not with those negative connotations, but rather, yes, it's a complex topic, and yes, it's very uncertain. We're treading waters that have yet to be tested, but by combining these different complex approaches, let's unite together and let's work together towards something that we all believe in. And let's appreciate the beauty of that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kyla. I think Kyla had wonderful messages about diversity not being forced, but reinforced as young people work together. I also like the fact that she mentioned how young people have to find their own voices through STEM, through policy, humanities, all of those other fields that each person is interested in. That being said, we have our last panelist, Jae-han. Please take the floor.
Good afternoon. I am a first-year student at Yeongjun Middle School, and I am also climate activist. I was a co-plaintiff of the baby climate lawsuit, and I'm also a climate activist. I want to talk about the future that is stolen from us. Here, today, I'm participating as a youth climate activist. But I'm not a extraordinary person. I'm just a regular adolescent. But I happen to participate in the baby climate lawsuit, and I happen to witness the ruling from the Constitutional Court in Korea. But other than that, I'm still just a regular student who enjoys sharing snacks with my friends. And in year 2022, I was 10-year-old, and that was my first time to participate in the climate lawsuit. I participated because, as a minor, I didn't have the right to vote. But I felt the urgency to do something about the climate change. Otherwise, climate change will get worse. So we asked a very simple question in the Constitutional Court. Is the current law protecting us from the climate change? And also the actions that we take today, isn't it infringing upon the rights of the future generation? So I also made my statement in the Constitutional Court. And last August, the Constitutional Court ruled that the current law violates, infringes upon the rights of the future generation. And by 2026, to achieve the net zero, now the government needs to set the carbon emission reduction goal. And also, according to that ruling by the Constitutional Court, because the minors cannot participate in the decision-making process for policy, so the policymakers need to consider this younger generation. So for me, it was a really important moment because I learned my voice can lead to real change. And this is really a landmark case where the Constitutional Court ruled that the present laws are infringing upon the future rights of the future generation. And also, during my activities, I learned the grown-ups' perspective about youth activists. I also learned about climate change, but that's not because I participated in this. I participated because I experienced climate change myself. There was a flooding, and I was really worried. What if my mom, who's now outside, cannot come back home? And because of the air pollution, sometimes I have difficulty sleeping because of my skin condition, and sometimes I'm worried about typhoon. I used to enjoy a seaweed snack, but I learned that it is now becoming difficult to grow seaweed because of the rising sea temperature. Now I'm worried about not being able to enjoy my favorite snacks. And I'm also worried about my cousin, who's younger than me. When my cousin becomes as old as I am, the climate crisis will become worse. So I'm worried for her as well. So it is unfair that we, the younger generation, should bear the consequences of the climate change. Some people call me Greta Thunberg in Korea, but I'm not a special person. I'm just a regular teenager who just wants to talk about the problems that actually impact my life. Climate change cannot be solved by a few extraordinary people. And I also had my trials and errors as a climate activist, and through them, I also grew. And I was not the only one who was growing. As we were pursuing the litigation, there were other adolescents who participated, even younger than me, and citizens, adult citizens, and lawyers, and my family, my friends, my neighbors. We all fought together, and they encouraged me a lot. And it was not just a simple litigation, it was our effort, our movement to build a better future for us. We don't need to wait for the hero to come and save us. Climate change is not something that can be solved by a few special people. Everyone, when we share our own stories, our own struggles due to the climate change, just where we are, that can actually begin a change. That can start a change, and sometimes perfectionism actually hampers actions. And despite the ruling from the Constitutional Court, the law hasn't changed. But there is definitely a change. I changed. I'm now more courageous, and I'm now more interested in the climate actions. And I learned that what I did can be done by many other people. And when we act together, we can make a change for the future. I want to talk about the actions that we can do for the future. It's not really a special technique or competence that we need to prevent climate change. I'm also just a regular person who's doing what she can do. For example, I understand that we cannot completely avoid using plastic. I also want to go on board an airplane and travel overseas. But I am trying to do something about the climate change. That's what matters. And my neighbors, my teacher, my family, they're all changing because of my actions. So even though it is not perfect yet, change has begun. And the change didn't start with a legal change. It began with a more empathy, more courage. For us to solve the climate change, it might take longer time. Some people say even if the law is changed, it's not going to make a difference. Some people say it's too late to make a change. It could be true that having a different law might not solve the problem, but we need to continue to live on. The grown-ups call us the future generation, but we've never learned our future. I feel like the grown-ups are kind of friends who borrowed my favorite pen from me, but then moved to a different school without returning that pen to me. So the law is not perfect, the world is not perfect yet, but we can make a change. And the first step to the change is to speak out and to speak out against the problems caused by the grown-ups. And we haven't given up. Our future hasn't come yet. And rather that our future hasn't come yet, our future is what we are building. So we are building our future together. We are already making changes. And I want to ask you this one last question. When does your future begin? Thank you.
Thank you, Jaya, for your honest remarks. And I think she has great points about leading by example as young people. But at the same time, I want to emphasize that it's not just young people who have to lead by example. At the same time, as adults, as corporations, politicians, all of us. Another point I want to make is that consistency is important. All of our actions were not just one-off, one-time things. We have been doing it for years, and we will continue to do it for more years as come. Now, I would like to move into the Q&A session. I have some questions prepared for our panelists. Starting with the first one will be a general one to all of us. I will ask in order of the presentation. When did you face the huge obstacle in tackling climate change as a youth, then how did you overcome it?
As I work as a climate activist, the biggest obstacle was the negative perception of people around me. And they keep on saying that I won't be able to do anything. And people say that I'm a student and I should just focus on study. So there's a very negative, critical perspective on me when it comes to my activism for climate change. But if, let's say, I'm not interested in the environment, if I'm not interested in climate change, then I may be swept away by these negative perceptions and I may have given up. However, I have not given up, and I thought that to overcome this negative perception, I felt like we had to create good examples where the youth could lead change. And like the other panel members mentioned, I wanted to show that there's power, that the youth has influence, the youth can start lawsuits, the youth can drive change. So that was my attitude, that was my approach, and I kept on trying. And along the way, I was able to get some attention and get some support. So what we need as youth activists is not your criticism, but your support and encouragement.
Thank you, Jaeyeon, for your response. Kyla, would you like to add on?
Sure. I do agree with the previous panelist that there are a lot of challenges acting as a youth activist in the climate action space, especially since age seems to be a huge restriction in our society. I would like to add on with another problem that I've experienced, which is the problem of uncertainty. Especially as I mentioned in my presentation previously, climate change is such a big issue and something with so many different approaches and so many different perspectives on how we should approach it. I just really had a hard time finding my own path and my own voice in this whole movement. And I think how I overcame that issue is thinking of it like an analogy. For example, in math, when you're solving a problem, well, this is kind of different because a math problem has a solution most of the time, but this doesn't have like a clear set solution. There can be multiple solutions to this issue, but my point is that there are different approaches that you take when you're solving a math problem. If it doesn't work algebraically, try it geometrically. If it doesn't work geometrically, try it statistically. There's lots of different approaches you can take, right? And my perspective on that is, explore all the options, explore all the different paths, meet people that might have different approaches than you. Like even if I work on innovative action through research and science, I work in labs and I work on technical solutions. I still talk with people that work on policy, people that work in economics, people that work just in terms of justice and other areas, right? And the real answer here is just gathering all of these things together and hoping that by adding and combining all of these different viewpoints and approaches, that we will one day find a solution to it all.
Thank you. The hope that's always there is really important, and it keeps us stay authentic to our journey. Now I would like to hear Jaya's response.
For me, as I was working as a climate activist, there were a lot of negative comments online, which really hurt my feelings. So these were personal attacks. It doesn't even look like a baby, and this child is brainwashed. So there were a lot of people who said that what I was doing was because of brainwash. And when I read these very insulting comments, I couldn't really understand why people would think that way. Why would they think that I was brainwashed? And there were some comments that, okay, she's just trying to get this volunteer hours because she wants to get into a good college. Well, I couldn't understand because I wasn't doing climate activism just because I wanted to get into a good college. That is not true. Well, people have this misunderstanding, and I just couldn't understand. And some say that there's a lot of denial. Okay, you should not ride in a car. You should not use air conditioning. That's not what I mean. I wanted to get everyone on board for climate action. And also there were a lot of accusations that I was being a hypocrite. And they were saying that I'm just too young. Well, I am just one of many ordinary kids who are worried about the future, who are worried about our climate. And over time, I felt like those who would write these comments, they are not interested in climate change, and they're just posting these negative comments. They're not interested in resolving the climate action and climate change. I don't really understand why they were doing that. Now I'm okay with these negative comments, but in the past I cried a lot.
Being honest to our open audience, Jaya, that was very brave of you. Now, taking another approach, I would like to ask our panelists the second question. How do you feel about being called and labeled climate activist or youth activist? And do you think the title is appropriate? Why or why not? Should we begin in the same order?
저는 기후 활동가라는
Well, climate activist sounds okay to me, but I think I'm very proud of the kind of activities we are doing for the environment. But I hope that our story will be spread wide. And I hope we can be perceived as just one kind of volunteers. Climate activists, yes, it is not a wrong term to call us, but I just want to say that this is not because we are brainwashed. This is not because we are made to do this. We are not being forced to do this. We are volunteering. We are volunteers. So it will be great if people can also see us as just a volunteer who's concerned about climate change.
I guess at first, when I was labeled as a climate activist or an environmentalist, I thought the title was suiting, since the word activist has the word act in it. And in essence, what we're trying to do is take on meaningful action to make a change. So as I continued on my journey, I began to think more about what this title meant to me and what that said about what I should do and how I should progress on my journey. And like I just mentioned, I think the word action plays a huge role in how we are portrayed to society, since action is something that's really powerful. It's even in our session title, I think. Yes, it is. It is in our session title. And action is more than words. It's more than empty promises. It's something that we're trying to do despite the restrictions that have been imposed on us by society and by general perception. It's a barrier that we're trying to break, and portraying us as people that want to move forward with action despite having facing certain criticism from society, like the previous panelist has said. I think it is an accurate portrayal of what we're trying to do. And like the other panelist has mentioned, I just hope that this is portrayed even more in society in a positive light. Yeah.
Thank you, Kyla. Jaya, what are your thoughts?
For me, well, I never actually perceived myself as a climate activist per se. For me, I'm just doing what I can do to protect my own future. And when I see other people, when they think that if you are a climate activist, you shouldn't get your hair color dyed, you shouldn't use an air conditioner, you shouldn't use electricity. But these people who say those things, they've been doing these things. So rather than being called a climate activist, well, these people who say these negative comments, they don't seem to be concerned about their future. But I am fighting for my future. So I would prefer to be called just a student who's fighting for her future.
Believe that since the title of being called an activist gives such a burden to young people, I think that's another reason why the public should be more conscious about how they react to our actions and how we interact. It's not just about climate activism, but about activism for anything, for a sustainable future, which is our theme. Whatever different activists are working for, those are things that they're passionate about, and those are things that we want to reach practicality with. And therefore, what we need is hope, cheer, and attention, and not hate, things that we may often more experience. Now I will ask one question to each panelist, starting with Jaehyun. How is the Korean educational system hindering youth from taking practical action and pursuing their passions?
Well, recently, there has been effort to improve the educational environment in Korea. So this is good news. Compared to the past, there's more emphasis on environment education and climate education. And there are a number of opportunities where students can volunteer for climate action. So this is a positive change. However, in reality, when you pursue passion and when you get into and participate in actual activities, there are a number of obstacles and there's a lot of criticism. There's still some cynical and critical view on students' participation in social activities. I hope that we should raise an awareness on the importance of youth activism, and I hope that we can identify good examples so that the society can understand that youth can be an important change.
But his wishes are granted by our society and government. To Kyla, I want to ask, what role does social media play in both exposing greenwashing and promoting genuine sustainability efforts?
So greenwashing is a topic that I have investigated for a very long time. If you have not heard of greenwashing before, I'll just give a brief introduction. Greenwashing is when companies or corporations mostly portray their business or their approach or product as sustainable, but in essence they are actually not. And they're just using buzzwords such as eco-friendly, sustainable, as an attraction point for consumers and the consumer base, but it's actually not as such. I think social media plays a very good role in exposing a lot of these incidents, especially because there are lots of accounts that have insights on their own experience buying those products and exposing that, oh, it's actually not sustainable, please do not buy or support this company. And there are lots of boycotts that have been initiated from these accounts. So I think it's a very positive influence.
Thank you, Kyla, for sharing your thoughts. Lastly, to Jaya, I want to ask, how can young leaders ensure their own sustainability initiatives don't fall into just simple performative activism?
Okay, of the performance activities, well, I do not consider this negatively, but I believe this is something that has been shaped by our society. Because performance activism is just to show off. This may be similar to greenwashing. And the performance-oriented action, if it can contribute to addressing climate change, it should not be called performance activism, but society seems to label it as performance activism, which has the connotation, negative connotation. Well, for you to avoid being a performance-oriented activist, you need to keep on thinking and reflecting on your own choices. Let's say you bought some plastic yesterday, and you have to think about that twice.
For participating till now. Please stick with us for one last minute. I really want to hear our panelists' last messages that they want to share with the global leaders. Jaehyun?
네, 이렇게
As I share my final thought, as I've been saying over and over again, I hope that youth activism will become more promoted, and we're having this discussion at Yonsei University, but I hope that we'll be invited to a larger occasions like international organizations so that our voices can be heard more effectively. And if we continue to raise our voices and have our voices heard, I believe this can lead to actual change. Those who will live in the future, we need to keep in contact with younger generation who will be the main actors of the future. So I hope that such communication will continue, and it was my honor to be part of the panel.
I guess what I really want to say to both activists and non-activists, just pursue your passion and approach climate action on your own terms and target it with your own voice. In the end, it's not practical to solve this issue by yourself. or any of us by ourselves in that matter. Climate action, the power of climate action comes from the amalgamation and combination of all of our efforts. So just please contribute to the issue in whatever way you can, and we all should hope for a solution that can occur with the collaboration and cooperation with all of us. And like the other panelists said, I hope that effort does reach some wider spaces as time goes on.
Well, for me, I know that there are people who do not recycle their waste, and sometimes I also feel like maybe recycling is not helpful, but then I question my thought once again, and I remind myself of the importance of acting for climate and acting for the environment. So that is where I get a sense of responsibility. And as a member of the society, I hope that everyone will have that sense of responsibility as well.
For all of these last messages, that is it for our session. Thank you all for joining. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you very much, Cherry and all the panelists. This was an extremely insightful session. In fact, I think the session leaves a big lesson for us, the adult or older generation. A bit embarrassed in some sense. And I think at GEEF, we talk about big pictures. We talk about big actions. We talk about the things that we can do as a community, as a society. But I think this session kind of highlighted the small efforts that we can make that can make real changes in the direction that we believe that the world should move in. Thank you once again very much for a great session.
Ladies and gentlemen, that actually brings us to the end of today's GEEF. There are still around 50 people in the audience, so kudos to all of you who have stayed with us and stayed interested. Let's carry the insights that we gained today to tomorrow and the day after and the day after and the day after, to see what kind of concrete actions we ourselves can do for the SDGs, for the Paris Climate Agreement. Thank you to each and every one of you for your engagement, and I'm looking forward to seeing you tomorrow for the second day of GEEF 2025.
Thank you.